So as we mentioned, my name is Devin McConnell, and this is the case level prediction of motion outcomes in civil litigation. So some background information. Lawyers regularly predict what courts will do and what to argue, when to settle, when to sue or prosecute, and when to reduce client liability risk. However, these predictions tend to be overconfident, not well calibrated, vulnerable to some bias, and advocating for a particular view. Therefore, recently, machine learning has been on the rise to aid in these predictions. In some scenarios, machine learning methods have been predicting judicial decisions with an accuracy that exceeds legal scholars. So using machine learning also has the potential for reducing litigation disadvantages faced by the poor, racial minorities, and other vulnerable groups due to court outcomes varying with the attorney quality and client resources. So one example of machine learning being used in legal predictions is the development of a random forest classifier on US Supreme Court data depicted here on 240,000 justice votes and 28,000 case outcomes. In 2004, machine learning was actually able to predict justice votes with a greater accuracy than legal experts, which is seen on the left of this slide. And then on the right, we're seeing machine learning being able to predict individual court outcomes with a greater accuracy than legal experts, split up by the category of that outcome. So the previously discussed methods focused on court opinions, which ignored many important formal procedures that lead to a final judgment and use features that are not available during litigation. In this work, we present machine learning methods that predict court outcomes at the level of individual motions. The goal of these methods is to provide client and lawyer support tools. We hope to reduce litigation disadvantages faced by vulnerable groups due to variability in the attorney quality and client resources. So here we are focusing on predicting whether a motion to strike is going to be granted or denied. And here I'm going to be showing Connecticut, and a motion to strike has a significant influence on a case's outcome and therefore is an important factor in legal decision making. In Connecticut, a motion to strike is a written petition for a defendant to a judge to remove part or all of a plaintiff's complaint allegation based on a legal insufficiency. So here we are providing an overview of the pipeline that we used for our work. And we computed two sets of features from the state of Connecticut's judicial branch court administrative database, which we're going to refer to as the minimal and subset features throughout the rest of this presentation. So this database contains administrative and procedural data for all civil court cases in Connecticut. These features were also combined with natural language features from complaint documents, and we then used a grid search to fine-tune the hyperparameters of the 6 machine learning models that we used. So starting off with the data collection of our pipeline, we used information from the court database that we had from Connecticut and the complaint documents we gathered as well. So starting off with the documents, many court documents are filed over the course of legal proceedings that are relevant to motion outcomes. We focused on complaint documents because they contain the facts alleged and legal claims that are asserted. They are available to all parties when a lawsuit begins and can therefore be used to support any decision making. For these complaint documents, we needed to convert them to text-based files so that we can use them during neural embedding feature extractions. So in the PDFs, if they contained images, we had to use Tesseract, which is an optical character recognition software maintained by Google. And we use this to convert images to text with higher accuracy. And when it only contained text, we used PDF to text, which could convert the text in the PDF to just a text file for us. And then we have the input from the court administrative database itself from the state of Connecticut judicial branch. These features are useful for the prediction of motion outcomes. And here I'm showing just a handful of the ones that we found useful. So case reference number and motion ID on this slide are ones that helped us map the cases to complaint documents, while case location is a one-hot encoded feature. Case major code here, we only use vehicular cases and tort cases. Motion result codes, we only used ones that were granted or denied, so GR or DN. And then motion filing party, we only use D for denied. And then motion juris number is just the attorney juris number for a given attorney. This feature also helped us create the attorney specialization feature, which will be described shortly. We ended up extracting 7,904 motion to strikes from the database. So all in all, we defined two feature sets from the database. So the first we defined as minimal, which contained the motion juris number and the attorney specialization. And then we also defined the subset feature, which contained case location, case major code, motion juris number, and the attorney specialization. It's also important to note that this data was pretty well balanced, with 54% of the motions being granted, 46 being denied, 47 being vehicular, and 53% of those cases being torts as well. And then moving on to the feature engineering, and we'll start off by talking about the attorney specialization. Attorney specialization is derived from the case distribution of major codes for each individual attorney juris number. Again, we are only looking at the torts and vehicular cases from the database. So here we use Shannon's entropy, whose probability vector is the relative frequency of major case codes. In this figure, we sorted the juris number on the x-axis by the entropy, and we see many lawyers have a high specialization, which means they have a lower entropy. But many of these cases are because we don't have much data for some of those attorneys. But to combat this problem, we worked on something to smooth the entropy with the Dirichlet multinomial, which is depicted on the right, which means we noticed that actually we don't have as many attorneys that are specialized as we originally thought. So the difference between using regular entropy and the smooth entropy can be viewed here on the left. So in this image, it shows many people being specialized, but it's because we don't have that much data to make a formal decision on whether they are specialized or not. So this could be because they only tried one or two cases in a specific area. But on the right, there's a Dirichlet multinomial smoothing out the entropy, which is controlling the variance of the entropy for the attorneys with small caseloads. We also built features based on the complaint documents. So rule-based features will map a condition to a class, where a condition is a group of Booleans for words in documents, and the class is a motion granted or denied. An example of this is if we have a complaint document, we can call it 1109 that contains car accident and negligence. And all of these words are also considered to be in the class denied. It would map to a label true, which means that this document is going to be a denied document. So we then took these rules that are learned by this classification during the rule learners to aid in our classification tasks later. So in this work, we also developed two versions of the rule-based learner algorithms, one of which is called the simple rule learner, and the other is called the first order inductive learner. So the simple rule learner algorithm is a greedy algorithm that adds a rule with it when it increases the accuracy of the model. So it counts up the frequency of the words in a granted document, which is going to be denoted here as a green box, and counts the number of the times that word appears in all the documents. And it also we use a grid search to determine the threshold of when to pick a word to be either granted or denied. So in this example, as mentioned, we use green squares to denote a granted document, red squares to denote a denied document, and green highlighted words to denote whether the search term was a granted word. This means the word is a rule that maps documents to a granted motion outcome. So here, the simple equation is going to be the number of granted words plus 1 over the number of words appeared in all the documents for that term, plus k, where k is the number of classes you have. So here, our k value is actually 2, so our result for this is 4/6. So the other model is the first order inductive learner, which tries to balance information gain with the documents covered. Here we're keeping track of the number of complaint documents that are granted and the ones that are denied for a given rule. But we also need to keep track of the ones that are turned denied when they are originally granted and the ones that are turned granted when they are originally denied. So here we're denoting the granted documents as green documents, so green squares that only contain the green words, and red squares that only contain the red words for denied. And we can denote the documents that become denied documents as green squares with only red words. And the same goes for the denied documents becoming approved documents. So this means a green highlighted word is a rule that maps documents to a granted motion outcome. And in contrast to rule-based features, neural embeddings attempt to represent a higher dimensional document with a lower dimensional numerical embedding. So Word2Vec is a two-layer neural network that takes a text corpus in as input and outputs vector representations of the words while trying to maximize the log probability of some word for some input word. While Doc2Vec is very similar to Word2Vec, instead of using just the one input word, you're taking a vector representation of that document to condition on. We also investigated a model called Law2Vec, which is a corpus-specific model of Word2Vec, and it used 123,066 documents that were on the United Kingdom legislative documents, European legislative documents, and several thousand English legislative documents. And to continue to make richer representation of the legal documents that we worked on, we investigated term frequency inverse document frequency, also known as TF-IDF. So you would do the term frequency multiplied by the inverse document frequency, where term frequency is the number of times the term you are looking for appears in a document over the number of words in the document. So here, the number of times the term appears in a document is going to be highlighted as pink, so 27 over the total number of words in that document is going to be 400. And you're multiplying it by that inverse document frequency, which is going to be the log of the number of documents in your corpus, which is 5 over the number of times that the word is contained in a document in your corpus, which is 2. So it's important to note that TF-IDF has shown success in natural language processing and aiding in increasing the accuracy of classifiers. And in recent years, TF-IDF has shown usefulness in corpus-specific weighting. And specifically with this, we'd see a weight of 0.027, which this weight would actually be useful to increase the accuracy score of our classifier, especially when we use it as a weight on a Word2Vec model. And it's important to note that a higher TF-IDF weight would represent a term that is in smaller amounts of documents, but more times, and a TF-IDF weight that is smaller is in more documents, less times. And then all three of these methods that extract information from Word documents are useful as standalone ways to improve your classifiers, but we can do better. So we can combine all three of these methods to make one method to increase the classifier accuracy. And we can do this by taking the TF-IDF weight and multiplying it onto our word-to-vec model embeddings that we extracted, and only using the rules that we extracted from the rule learner algorithm. So first we would do identifying the important rules from a rule learner, which for us, we identified that the FOIL algorithm was better off than the simple. And then we would only extract the word-to-vec embeddings from the FOIL list that was generated, and also only the TF-IDF weights from that FOIL list as well. We would multiply the TF-IDF weight that corresponds to negligence onto the negligence vector from word-to-vec, and then average out that vector for all of those word-to-vec so that we would have one averaged out vector to create a document representation of our complaint documents. So now we'll talk about the parameter optimization and machine learning models that we worked with.
Devin, McConnell, just 5 more minutes, please.
Okay. So we trained 6 models: AdaBoost, gradient boosting, extra gradient boosting, support vector machines, decision trees, and random forest. So a tree classifier aims to construct a hierarchy of decision rules that recursively splits the data until a leaf is reached that denotes the inferred class label, which is seen on the left. And then boosting is a general ML technique based on building an accurate learner from an ensemble of weak learners. This is similar to using an ensemble of tree classifiers with low depth. And then we also use support vectors seen on the right that tries to classify the data through solving a convex optimization problem, yielding a hyperplane that optimally separates 2 classes. We then optimize the parameters through a grid search using a 70-30 testing and training and testing split with a 10 cross-fold validation. And then to quantify variability in these fine-tuned models, we did 100 bootstraps. So to then figure out what version of the features we wanted to use versus minimal and subset, we wanted to quantify their difference. So here, just a refresher of minimal and subset. Minimal only had the attorney specialization and motion juris number, and subset contained motion juris number, attorney specialization, case location, and the major case code. And on the y-axis here, it's the motion classification accuracy, which is going to be the proportion of correct predictions to all predictions. And on the x-axis, it's our models, which again are the AdaBoost, decision tree, gradient boosting, random forest, support vector, and extra gradient boosting. So here we did notice that adding and using the subset features with case location major code increased our accuracy overall. And we had the best performing with decision trees. So the median and mean accuracy on this model was 0.583. So we ended up only using the subset features for the rest of our results. And then we also investigated our 3 models across all different methods and compared it to a baseline classifier, which the baseline classifier had an accuracy score of 0.501. And just looking at the database features, we've noticed that the database features did score better than this baseline, but less than 0.6. And every time we added doc2vec and word2vec onto these database features, we did see an increase in accuracy score, but our best performing model was the one that had the FOIL, word2vec, and TF-IDF added onto the database features. And just so you know, as I mentioned before, the FOIL, word2vec, TF-IDF is the model that we averaged the word2vec weighted by TF-IDF from only the words that were learned by the rule algorithm. So this model gave us a 0.644 accuracy from our grid search and a mean of 0.605 from the AdaBoost model. And our decision tree had the best mean of 0.606. And we also tested the difference between predicting torts and vehicular cases for the database combined with FOIL, Word2Vec, TF-IDF, and noticed that SVMs were an outlier in being able to successfully predict the vehicular cases with considerable accuracy. Last piece of results here, we also calculated the feature importance from the decision trees, which feature importance is useful to let us know how the model's features contribute to predicting what we're trying to guess here. And here we're showing on the vertical axes the grouping of features from the TF-IDF, whether it be TF-IDF simple or the subsets. And then on the x-axis, it's the non-zero for at least one of those configurations. The last column is the sum of the Word2Vec features. And then we did note that major case code, attorney specialization, and Word2Vec have the highest average importances across the board. So then quickly to conclude, we did develop a pipeline that includes feature engineering rooted in legal domain. We also developed and benchmarked the first machine learning method to predict motion outcomes, also demonstrated that motion to strike outcomes are predictable with high accuracy when you use features for attorney specialization and with natural language processing. We believe that this can be useful to predict the survival rate of motion to strike with a complaint document, and believe that it can help parties to make more informed settlement decisions, as well as help rewrite complaint documents for better outcomes. And then our future work, we think better investigation in corpus-specific neural embeddings like transformer models such as BioBERT, LawBERT have seen great success, so that could be helpful. We also aim to expand this work to other motions like motions to summary judgment. Also hope to create a web interface for easier access and interaction to our models and for attorneys and clients. And then we hope to collect more data from surrounding jurisdictions and states. And we also aim to compare the results to a legal expert panel for our future work. And then just a quick thank you to the state of Connecticut Judicial Branch for providing us with our data, and my lab for the great support they've had over this past few weeks preparing, and my co-authors for the legal knowledge they provided and help with all the code. And if anybody is interested in this work, all the code is available at my lab's GitHub at Aguiar Lab Motion Predict. It has all of our rule learner, TF-IDF, word embeddings code to extract and combine the work, along with our grid searches, bootstrapping methods, and parameters for the models, as well as the models.
Hi, Devin. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really interesting, and it is really useful to share your GitHub address. I think it will be nice to visit and to understand more about the model. So we have one question already. I'm gonna read for you. Just a question. Great work. I understand that relating the motion outcome to certain words. Could you elaborate more on how to select those words? I could imagine that some words would appear in both granted and denied cases. How would you resolve that?
Yeah, so the way we were doing it, we worked on developing oh, you sent it in the chat.
I just copy pasted the question, maybe it's easier. So, and it's a compliment about the work, and how do you elaborate, and how do you not appear when the granted and denied cases, when you resolve, how do you resolve that?
Yeah, of course. So what we did, we worked on looking at the two rule-based learning algorithms. So one of them, like I was saying, was the simple algorithm, and the other one was the FOIL-based learning algorithm. And of course, that does happen. Some of them do show up in the granted and denied cases. They're going to potentially show up more in one over the other. So we did perform a grid search to solve this problem, to figure out what the best scenario is to determine if one is going to figure out the cut off of where this might be. So that's pretty much how we handled this, and using a testing and train split with a cross validation as well. So that was a 70-30 split with the cross validation of 10 as well for these.
Okay, great. If the author of the question have more questions, if not clarify, please, you can send us more questions. Until there, we have one more question that I'm going to copy paste here and read the question for you. How accurate can this kind of technology be in countries and legal orders or legal teams where jurisprudence is in constant change due to the new legal thesis?
That's a good question. I would imagine, I'm not particularly sure, I would imagine it should still hold up, considering there is work with United Kingdom legislative work as well as European legislative work. So I believe it should still hold up as long as people have similar court work, such as motions to strike and complaint documents. So as long as there is work along that lines, we are working to expand this to other types of courts as well. But I believe it should.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure.
I think, yeah, it's a difficult question. And I was wondering that when you said that the next phase of your project about your paper is to work with a legal panel, maybe it can be some hypothesis that you can work together, like trying to understand the different changes in the different legal themes.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to keep that one in mind. So great question.
Great. I'm not sure if we do have any more questions. I don't think so. I'm just checking out. Okay, I think we don't have more questions, but you will still remain 3 minutes, 2 minutes now, if you want to do a closing with the final words. The floor is yours.
I think, yeah, so if anybody is interested, I can flash my last slide again for the GitHub, but we are definitely interested in people taking a look at our work, and giving feedback if people are interested. So there's this, and yeah.
So first, Marcelo Lopez asked, is your system applicable to all courts in the United States, or could differences between procedures affect the efficiency of the system?
Yeah, so at this time, we do believe that as long as there is a court that produces some sort of case similar to a motion to strike that is like the ones in the state of Connecticut, we think that it should hold up and be comparable and have the same efficiency. We do hope to have and obtain other data from surrounding judicial courts to be able to test this.
You are muted. Sorry, we can listen.
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. So as long as this is the scenario, it should be fine, and you should be able to do a similar efficiency to what we were getting. We do hope to get other data from surrounding judicial court systems to prove this and work with legal scholars to help with this issue as well.
Okay, the next one is from Ruta Liepina. Are you planning to further distinguish fact and legal basis in the background sections?
So at this time, we haven't, but I think in future work, this might be a great thing to look into and further explain. This would definitely come in helpful with when we're working with other motions, such as the motions to summary judgment, and just further distinguishing the differences and working with that legal panel that we hope to as well.
Okay, thank you. And the last one from Jack Conrad. To what would you attribute the finding that there didn't appear to be major differences between the overall performance of the different algorithms?
So we did notice increased performance between the different algorithms when we added the word2vec features and the doc2vec features, but performance between the single database features was the only time we didn't really see the increased performance on some scenarios. And looking at the law2vec features, and we didn't explore this too much, but we did see some variability when we looked at the SVM could support a higher accuracy, precision and recall score than our accuracy score. So there was a little bit, but not too much. But to answer the question, we didn't look too far into the attribution to why across the algorithms this was happening, but we did notice that adding these neural embeddings did improve the accuracy score for our algorithms that we looked at. So the neural embeddings from the complaint documents did help our algorithms.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Devin McConnell. Do you have any final considerations?
I just would like to say thank you to this conference. And if anybody would like to check out our work, it's at our lab's GitHub, AguiarLab/motion predict. So thank you so much.